Today we're going to rank all 32 NFL teams by just how good their punters or punting situation is, and at the bottom tier we're going to start off with punting limbo. These teams could go either way, but they have 2 or more punters fighting it out on the spot. This includes teams like the Buffalo Bills, who moved on from Sam Martin and currently have Brad Robbins and Jake Camarda battling it out for a spot, as well as maybe some other free agents in the mix. We'll go ahead and throw the Buccaneers in here as well, as almost too early last season they moved away from Jake Camarda and then struggled with their kicking game because of it. They did bring in CFL stud Jake Julian, but he has to battle it out with NFL vet Riley Dixon if he wants to get the job from them. While we're here, we'll throw in the Saints, who are on a new punter for the 2nd straight year with Matthew Hayball, but once again elected to bring in a rookie with the signing of Alabama star James Burnham after their previous rookie had only a moderately successful campaign. The next spot we're going to have is the totally untested tier. This is for teams who are likely starting a rookie and in my opinion have a higher variability than the limbo teams, like the Broncos, who drafted punter Jeremy Crawshaw and has an absolute cannon for a leg. The thing is, he didn't get to hit pro style punts that much in college, so we'll have to see how he handles the season for them, but it could be a little interesting. The same can be said for the Jets, who signed undrafted free agent Kai Kroger and released the veteran Thomas Morstead. And while Kai did a lot more pro style punting, New Jersey is notably harder to punt in than the admittedly pretty mild-mannered temperatures of the SEC, and especially the pretty relaxed Carolina weather that I'm all too familiar with. Okay, moving on to C tier. These are the teams that, although no alarms may be going off for one reason or another, their punting position isn't really at the top of the game anymore. Easily fitting into this spot are the Titans. After moving on from their standout punter Ryan Stonehouse, I can only assume that they had to change everything about how they're going to run their special teams. They did bring in a guy that can hopefully turn around the ship in Johnny Hecker, but his time with the Panthers shown that he's a little bit off his peak. That being said, they also brought in John Fassel, who was with Hecker at his absolute best, so if they end their season being an A+ tier, I wouldn't be surprised. The next team in this lineup is going to be the Falcons. Bradley Pinion has been in the league for 9 years going on 10. He's had ups, he's had downs, and his last season was a little bit on the downside. Considering that he's not getting any younger, sure, he could turn the boat around and have an up year, but I just personally would feel safer keeping the Falcons in the C tier situation until we see what happens next year. Next, we're going to move to the Giants, who've been doing fine with Jamie Gillen. However, a string of injuries does cause pause. They had to bring in a guy last year to fill in, hurting the overall quality of the punting, and this is the 2nd time Jamie has gotten injured in his 5-year career, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on and what's keeping them from moving higher. Following that one up is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now I say this because pretty much the same reason as the Giants, they are still in the C tier. Their starting punter only got 2 reps before getting injured. Their backups were okay, and assuming their starter comes back and is 100%, they should be healthy too, but it's not uncommon for guys to come back and not be full go, so C tier is a safe place until proven otherwise. And then at the tip top of the C tier is the Carolina Panthers. Yes, they brought in Sam Martin. Sam Martin is a solid, albeit maybe not the best in the NFL, but they should expect a good amount of production out of the 12-year vet, but like some of the older punters we'll go over, his best years are probably behind him, and there's no shame in that, being able to hold down a C tier position in year 13. Which brings us to the B tier, and we're going to start with a similar situation in the 49ers. They struggled last year with injuries and decided that they wanted to bring in the vet of all vets, Thomas Morstead. Now, when you get T-Moore, you know you're getting good punting. He was amazing as a Saint, great as a Jet. I'm assuming in year 17 he will still be as solid as a 49er. I'm sure for him it's surreal to see the impact he's had on the younger generation, as they have all seemed to catch up to him and expanded on his techniques, but even in the twilight of his career, he is still holding things down. Now, we have a couple of guys who played well and have room to take a step forward, and I think they'll do just that. Let's start with Green Bay's Daniel Whelan. He's had 2 productive years and is steadily getting better. One of these years, though, I think is all going to click, and he may jump to a top 15. Right now, I just see him taking another solid step forward. The same could be said for the Vikings' Ryan Wright. This guy has been good for them, and I think he'll continue to get better in year 4, which is where a lot of punters start to settle in and take off. On the same note, I think you may have the Rams' Ethan Evans, who might be ready to put the final pieces in place to potentially even move up into the high A tier this year, as last year they were hitting pretty much all end over ends. As soon as they feel confident in their coverage and let Ethan spiral it more, we might really be ready for a treat. But assuming to keep the reins on, just expect another solid year from the Rams punter. Something similar could be said for the Vikings punter Ryan Wright. This guy has been good for them, and I think he's going to continue to get better into year 4, which is often when punters really start to settle in and even take off a little. And And in the same sort of boat in the rest of the bottom half of the B are the Chiefs. Their punter Matt Araiza had a good first year in the league. Will it get better? Will it get worse? Time will tell. But if it stays around the same, which is what it has the highest probability of doing, then they're going to be just fine. And you know what? Let's go mask off, because the last three are all punters in a strikingly similar situation. The Ravens and Jordan Stout are in the mix, the Patriots with Bryce Baringer, as well as the Bears and Torrey Taylor. All of these teams have punters who, like in the last 10 years, would have been top 10 in the league, but since there are so many good punters, they push each other down into B tier as they hover around that 41.4 league average net punt. Next, nearing the top of B tier, we're going to put Brian Anger for the Cowboys. Now, had he not come off consecutive All-Pro years, maybe he'd be a little bit higher, losing the punting, whispering special teams coach to Tennessee and coming off of a step-down year, as well as being a little long in the tooth. It leads me to believe that while we should expect some good production out of him, it may not be like years past, which brings us to the A tier, where we're starting off with Browns' Corey Bojorquez. Now, Cleveland is not an easy place to punt, but no one seemed to tell Corey that, who has been a continuous high performer in his years there and constantly has games that will leave your jaw on the floor. I know I probably have him higher than most, but hey, it's my list, so fuck it. And I'm going to follow him up with another savvy vet who's been on a couple teams, with the Chargers' J.K. Scott. Some people don't like J.K. They say, Isaac, he kicks the ball too high and too short. And I say, I don't care. He's so smooth. He hits it high. He limits returns. He solves Rubik's Cubes. And anytime he's on the field, you should feel pretty safe in your punt unit. Following that up is the Bengals. Now, this may just be because it's my team and I was super high on Ryan Rico, but he has had an absolutely insane rookie campaign. And if he stayed punting at this level, he'd be upper A's. But since it was his first year, I have to leave room for him to have a sophomore slump. But unless it's an absolute sophomore slack off, I would expect another high level from him. Moving up from that, surprisingly to some, I'm going to put the Dolphins. Now, while they technically are in a limbo situation with Stonehouse and Jake Bailey duking it out for the job, they've got two pretty good punters battling it, with Jake slowly but surely trending back upward from an all-time high and Ryan coming in with a lot to prove. So I think whoever wins this battle is going to have a dang good year, with the ceiling being S tier. Right up there with them is going to be the Eagles' Braden Mann, who is on an absolute redemption tour. I think if you told me a couple years ago that Mann was going to be the guy who brought stability to the Eagles punting, I'd be a little surprised, but that's exactly what he's done. He's looked good, he's punted good, and has been a absolutely solid part to their playoff and Super Bowl run. Now, reaching our mid-A tier, I'm going to throw in the Commanders' Tress Way. I mean, as the fourth oldest active punter right now, he's still getting it done at an incredibly high level. Rumors are always that Washington is looking to bring in fresher blood, but no one can seem to beat out Tress for the job. So as long as that never happens, I'd expect another good A tier year. In that same range, we've a constant performer in the Colts' Rigoberto Sanchez. He's just a great net punter. He's performed well and under the radar for the last 8 years while continuously being in the upper half of net punt. So there's no reason to think that that's going to change for whatever reason next year. And at the very top of the A tier is going to be the Cardinals with Blake Gillikin. Now, Blake had a top 3 net punt, so arguably he should be higher. But the S tier, as you'll see, is a complete smoke show of the absolute best this generation has to offer. Blake can absolutely hang with those guys, but he needs more years of doing what he just did to be included with the absolute elites. Which brings us to the S tier, the top 5 punters in the league, with number 5 going to the Texans' Tommy Townsend. Of the elites, Tommy has had the most variability year to year, but he also has some of the highest ceilings as everyone on this list, as his 2022 campaign was one of the greatest punting seasons of all time. Last year was his first year with the Texans. He did very well. I only expect him to do better this year. To follow that up, I'm going to put number 4, my personal favorite punter, the Seahawks' Michael Dixon. He's like 6 years in a row without a down year, and we're actually in a weird spot where previously you'd think he'd never be taken out of being number 1 in the league, but some of the younger guys have just taken an opportunity to catch up to him, which leaves him still in the top 5, but just outside of the top 3, where when we get to the top 3, we have leading the charge, Lions' own Jack Fox. Now, Jack did just come off of a historically good season where he averaged 51 yards per punt and netted 45.8 of those yards, which is up with some of the best numbers we've ever seen. So what's the holdup? Well, the other two guys are just insanely good, but this is also Jack Fox's second true entry in his GOAT catalog, behind an insane rookie debut, while the other two have been pumping out comparable numbers at slightly higher rate. But assuming he keeps this up, he can certainly climb with our number 2 guy, the Raiders' very own AJ Cole. Now, while his top end might be slightly below some of the others at this level, he makes up for it by being the pinnacle of consistency, with his last year technically even being a step step down in net average, but my god, he's proven that he can be the number 2 or number 1 guy year in and year out. So I would expect that level of punting until proven otherwise, as the only guy doing it more consistently is the Jaguars' own Logan Cook. Despite the fact that last year was the first year he actually got recognition, the craziest thing about Logan's career is that his first All-Pro year isn't even an outlier. It's only slightly better than some of his other seasons, as he has been a true field position flipper and dominator. He hits them far, he hits them well from back up, he pins teams, and no one in NFL history has done it as good as he has over the last 6 years. So there's your final list. Tell me who you agree with or disagree with, and I'll see you later.